Hello, John Talley here with Partzilla.com, and welcome back to our project, our engine rebuild on our 2012 Polaris XP900. As you can tell, we've already made some pretty good headway. Drained the fluids, removed the battery, went ahead and removed the rollover protection, and then the bed box on the back. Well, now is when it's going to start to get a little bit tougher. So you want to pay special attention to where every wire is, every nut, every bolt needs to be tagged, put in a bag. You need to tag the wires so you know where they go back. It may seem easy when you're pulling it apart, but it's going to be a whole other world when you go to put it back together. So follow along, take some notes, and we'll see if we can get this engine out and get it over to the teardown bench. Let's get started. All right, let's get started by pulling the clutch cover off. Just a bunch of 10 millimeters that go around the perimeter. They want you to take it off, the shock off, but it can be done a little bit tight. All right, guys, let's go ahead and get these clutches out of here. Start off with the driven one. Let's go ahead and pop loose that drive clutch. We'll pull them off together. All right, want to make very certain that you use the right clutch removal tool for this, because if you don't, it'll end up stripping it, and you don't want that. Voila. Kind of scary, but also very satisfying. That's what it's supposed to sound like when it pops off. It actually looks pretty good shape. All right, next, need to remove these 7 bolts and then a couple of push pins at the top, and then this inner cover will come off. At this point, we can go ahead and remove the breather line that goes up to the oil canister. You can go and remove the one that comes from the valve cover, and then the one that's actually venting to outside air. Now we can go down there, and it's a little bit tight, but you can get the one that's going to the valve cover. It's just held in place by a compression clamp. Go ahead and pull that up and get it out of the way. Next, let's go ahead and take off the send and return lines that are going to the oil canister. It's going to be really important to get those back in the right place, so make note of it. Now keep in mind there's going to be some oil still left in the canister itself. So before we actually pop these lines, let's go ahead and get a drain pan, and there's a bolt down at the bottom of it, a drain bolt. Let's go ahead and get that drained out. That way we won't make quite as big of a mess. Once that is through draining, then we can get around there and disconnect that hose. There'll still be a little bit of oil in it. Just use some type of small cup to catch whatever's left in there. Now we can go ahead and unbolt the canister from the frame itself. A couple of bolts in the back, and then there'll be another pair up front. Now to get to these other bolts up front, let's go ahead and get this I guess you want to call it a firewall out of the way. And plus that'll give us access to the rest of the front of the engine. Now we can get to those 2 bolts up front. Alright, now we can go ahead and remove the oil canister itself. Basically just kind of clamps it in place. Next we can get those cross member bolts on the other side. Remove this little heat shield, one little plastic rivet on the bottom. Then we can go ahead and lift out the support brace. Next, let's go ahead and get some of this plumbing out of the way. I do not plan on reusing any of this. We're just going to put her back stock, so all this is going to come off. Next, let's go ahead and get the airbox disconnected and up and out of the way. It's plastic, so I don't want to damage it, when we go to pull the engine out. After you get these top bolts out, then there's that large clamp that actually goes down to the intake. You're going to want to loosen it up and then just separate it from the intake boot. Next, let's go ahead and get that idle control valve, throttle position sensors, Basically any of the wires that are heading over to the motor. Get those vent lines out of the way. A couple of bolts, and then we'll be able to remove this upper bracket. Make sure you tag both of your fuel injector lines so you can get them back in the right place later. I just did mine right and left. Next, we go and get this collar out of the way and disconnect the send and return lines that are going to your fuel rail. Then we can go ahead and pop out the throttle bodies. I left the throttle cable actually attached, and we're just going to lay it off to the side. Next, we need to go ahead and address the coolant hoses. The one coming off the thermostat first. May want to go ahead and have another catch bucket under it. And then we'll get the one heading back to the radiator right here. Fair amount of fluid still in the hose, so you want to make sure you've got something under the vehicle to catch all this fluid. Well, catch as much as you can. As you can see, I'm making a bit of a mess, but we'll clean that up as we go along. Next, let's go ahead and address the exhaust system. At the head, it's just held in place by some Allens. Most of them you can get to with a standard, Allen socket. Others you're going to have to use just a regular old right-handled Allen. But to get enough torque on it, I'm actually using an extension with a socket. Once they're broken loose, then you can go and remove the rest of the threads by hand. Like I said, you want to bag all this stuff, because when it comes time to put it back together, it makes it a lot easier. With that done, let's go ahead and get the mufflers disconnected from the headers. This particular setup from Dragonfire actually is held in place by springs. All right, with that done, we go ahead and wiggle the exhaust headers out. Not absolutely necessary, but I do want to go ahead and get the mufflers out of the way. Only thing left to hold them in place, just the couple of upper brackets. Sometimes instead of putting them in a bag, I'll even put the nuts or bolts back where they came from, if possible. Next, let's go ahead and get the starter wires off. Your positive, and the negative will be right on the edge of the starter. Go ahead and get some of your wiring out of the way. Alright, this one actually had an aftermarket oil pressure gauge on it. We'll disconnect that later. First, let's go ahead and get the stator output disconnected. It just unplugs. Next, let's go ahead and break these engine to transmission bolts loose. You actually need to hold that center section while you're removing the nut on the other end. And do not let it turn, otherwise it's going to strip out those threads on the other end. With the nuts disconnected, then you can just tap the bolt back through. I'm using a screwdriver just to go ahead and send it through. Next, let's get that front engine mount done. Just a couple of bolts on either side at the front of the motor. Alright, last but not least, we need to go back and release those jam nuts and those threaded spacers, and go ahead and get them removed. With those out of the way, that's going to give us enough clearance to go ahead and lift the engine out. Next, need to go and attach a chain to the engine, then the chain to the hoist, and let's start lifting her out. Now you may have to prowl on it a little bit to get it to release, and then carefully bring it up, doing this slowly. Make sure you got everything disconnected and nothing's hanging up anywhere. Well, alright guys, she is out of the frame now. What's next? Well, I'm going to go set it down on the teardown bench and we're going to dive into it. So, if you would, follow us over to the next installment and we'll figure out what's happened to this poor engine. Until then, we just want to say thanks for watching.